We are talking about a suspicious fire here, and when it comes to commercial properties, that can actually be a felony offense. At one point, an employee took to social media saying everyone was told to get out of the building and walk across the street right here, taking cover in a nearby shopping mall. A Richmond woman held at gunpoint outside of her own home and then pistol whipped when she wouldn't hand over the car keys. Now police are on the case, and so are we. Well, I've been pouring through the 100 pages of documents that no other reporter has. Speaking of which, police say when it gets cold, a lot of folks have a tendency to do this. Leaving the keys in the ignition because it'll just be a minute. We're talking about a hostage situation inside of that Walgreens as we speak. Another juvenile killed in the city of Richmond. This makes the third teenage death within just 2 weeks here. Well, if you felt the need to bundle up this morning, that's because it's feeling more like winter today, and I don't like that one bit. I'm standing in front of the Capitol Gazette building, which remains sectioned off by crime scene tape right now. The town of Annapolis working to get through a tragedy as the man accused of causing it makes his first appearance in court.
We've seen a lot of this tragedy on TV.
But for Annapolis,
when it literally happens right next door to you,
unimaginable tragedy became the reality.
People you know.
5 Capitol Gazette employees being remembered now for their dedication to journalism. True to its word, the Capitol Gazette published a paper Friday covering the crime that claimed the lives of its own. I sat in the courtroom as Ramos appeared by video conference, but he never said a word. This is, though, where we learned new details from the prosecution.
The rear door was barricaded. Mr. Ramos then, as I told the judge, entered into the front door and worked his way through the office where he was shooting victims as he walked through the office.
Prosecutor Wes Adams says Gerard Ramos shot a victim trying to leave and then barricaded an exit so others couldn't. Are there lessons to be learned from this tragedy here?
The lessons to be learned here is that we have an individual who was identified previous to yesterday that they knew was a threat.
Retired police officer Daniel Costa is now training Maryland businesses how to take precautions.
When his first shot is fired, it's already too late. And we try to teach businesses, look for the red flags. When you see the red flags, who do they contact? How do they address the concerns? How do they teach employees to look over their shoulders, to address the problem before it becomes a problem?
It comes as a community is now vowing to rebound, uniting to become Annapolis strong.
So that's what we're praying for these families, is that their hope is in something greater, and they can hold on to that, and that this isn't the end, and that we will be here with them.
And while it's been days now of shock and uncertainty, there's a collective spirit here in town to not only get through the tragedy, but to come out stronger. On your side in Annapolis, Brent Solomon, NBC 12. The killer's mother called 911 saying he had just told her he killed his son. By that time, he was already on the road headed north. And that's where this story would come to a chilling end several states away. It all started with a frantic 911 call.
911, address of the emergency.
Yes, my son just called me, and he told me he killed his baby.
Dispatchers in Knightdale, North Carolina, not far from Raleigh, taking the disturbing tip from a woman in distress.
You said that he told you he killed his baby? Okay, ma'am, listen to me. What's your name?
I can't even believe this is happening.
Earlier today, around 9 o'clock, our officers received a welfare check request. Our officers responded to that location, made entry into the residence, and there they discovered the body of a 7-month-old male infant.
That baby was the result of an incestuous relationship between 43-year-old Stephen Pladel and his 20-year-old biological daughter, Katie. The discovery of their dead child was just the beginning of a multi-state crime spree. Stephen's mother says Katie told him she wanted to call it quits, so he traveled to Connecticut where she was, killed her and her adoptive father before turning the gun on himself in New York.
It was just odd.
Chris Carlton lived next door to the Plato family here on Locust Grove Court in Henrico.
And you can always tell a predator you know it, like it just clicks. And it always clicks for me with that guy.
He's worried about the killer's other young children who he had from his ex-wife, the mother of his daughter.
2 kids who'll never be able to understand what it is to be normal and to live a life, because this will always hang over their heads.
The sad story of an incestuous affair with a little baby now dead in the tragic outcome.
Oh my God. He's such a wonderful little boy.
Okay.
Now, Plato's mother told dispatchers he left a key outside of the front door where his dead son, Bennett, was inside. Live on your side, Brent Solomon, NBC 12. In my one-on-one interview with Martin Luther King III, what was immediately undeniable, King's passion for continuing the fight for peace and equality, not because this is a mission he inherited, but because it's who he is.
If I woke up every morning attempting to fill the shoes of my father, I would fail miserably.
Yet Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s oldest son has become a pioneer in his own right. 60-year-old Martin Luther King III travels the nation, continuing the fight for civil rights.
My mom used to say, look, Martin, you just be your best self. You don't have to go to Morehouse, where your father went, which I did. You don't have to be a civil rights leader, which I ended up becoming. You don't have to be a minister, which I was not called to the ministry thus far. So my point is, I'm thankful that she said, you be your best self, and we will support you in whatever that means.
It's meant fighting for issues his father hoped for, but never fully saw develop.
When you have people who are disallowed to vote because of not having a certain kind of ID, there's an issue of income inequality in this nation. Dad was talking about a living wage in 1966.
It's why King visited Richmond Sunday, serving as the keynote speaker at Virginia Commonwealth.
Maybe it's climbing.
Encouraging the need for renewed activism 50 years after his father was assassinated in a quest for equality. You were young in 1968.
Yes.
First, take me back to that moment.
My siblings and I were in our den in Dad and Mom's home, and we were watching the news, and it flashed over the news. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has just been shot.
The nation lost an icon that day, but he lost his hero. His late mother, Dr. Coretta Scott King, offered consolation.
She didn't say, your father's been killed. She said, your father has gone home to live with God. And when God's servants serve God well, he brings them home to rest. So when you see him, it will be as if he's asleep, but he won't be able to hug and kiss you and talk to you. But you will one day see him again.
Now, the man who shares his father's name is on a mission to help America not just remember the dream, but to live it, even as it continues to manifest. On your side in Richmond, Brent Solomon, NBC 12. But good morning. Thank you for waking up with 12 News today. I'm Brent Solomon. So let's get things started with a first check on your forecast. For that, we turn to meteorologist Megan Wise in our First Alert Weather Center. Good morning, Megan. This morning, many of your brackets are probably trashed. If you missed it last night, a major upset in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Number 1, Virginia making history for all the wrong reasons. The Wahoos were defeated by the UMBC Retrievers 74-54, making this the first time a number 1 seed has lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So Mark Davis is in Charlotte now with how players and fans are reacting. Right now in Richmond, police searching for a missing meteorite. Capitol Police say someone stole an iron nickel meteorite, you heard me right, from the speed exhibit at the Science Museum. So AJ Nwoko is following that investigation, and he's speaking with people who can't believe this unusual theft. Happening today, the Transformation Expo getting underway in Richmond. It's a day of inspiration and transformation with local and national recording artists. Gospel singers John P. Key, the legendary Clark Sisters, and Jonathan McReynolds, just to name a few. It's all going down today at the Greater Richmond Convention Center from noon until 6. But first, caught on camera, a mobile home explodes after it catches fire in California. Take a look. You can see worried neighbors and officers were nearby. One officer even helped a man get away from the burning home just moments before the blast. Henrico police investigating a possible case of road rage after someone pulled a gun on Broad Street. This was around 9:30 Friday morning in the 7,000 block of Broad. The victim said someone pulled a gun and made a threat, so the victim followed the car, but the suspect got out and ran. Well, the dog, who racked up a large amount of frequent flyer miles in the past couple of days, is now back home with his family. The Swindle family was moving from Oregon to Kansas and put their German Shepherd, Ergo, on a United Airlines flight. But in a frightening ordeal, Ergo got swapped with a Great Dane going to Japan. Well, we continue to follow the latest on that deadly bridge collapse in Miami. Still ahead in our next half hour, what an engineer had to say just days before the bridge came crashing down, and what we're learning about the company's past projects right here in Virginia. Well, good Saturday morning to you at 6:30 now. I'm here with meteorologist Megan Wise. It's a little chilly out, and we may even need our umbrella at some point. More shakeup in Washington. Attorney General Jeff Sessions fired former FBI Director Andrew McCabe. McCabe had been on leave since January and was set to retire this Sunday. Well, his termination was recommended by the FBI's office and was based on the findings of the Justice Department's Inspector General. Meantime, officials say an engineer called 2 days before the Florida bridge collapsed to report cracks in the structure. And this comes as emergency crews continue to work around the clock to clear debris and recover victims. 6 people are dead and several more were injured. So Emily Schmidt has the latest. Well, a local mother says there was no good reason for a Richmond police officer to shoot her son. Thomas Southworth was shot Tuesday night in a South Richmond parking lot. He was a suspect in a robbery in Hanover that happened a day earlier. Well, you have something new to wash down your burger at Sonic this summer. The drive-in chain is introducing a slushie and it's made with pickle juice. That's right. The pickle juice slush, as the name suggests, is a snow cone-like beverage flavored with pickle juice and colored bright green. New this morning, a traffic stop in Atlanta is changing a homeless single mother's life for the better. An officer pulled over Ebony Rhodes and arrested her for not having insurance, an expired license, and registration. Well, on the ride to the station, the officer discovered she and her 4 children had been living in that car for 6 months. Well, several National Guard soldiers from Virginia could be honored for their work in helping those affected by massive hurricanes last year. Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria made landfall in the Atlantic and Caribbean last fall. Well, in the days after, the 2nd 183rd Cavalry out of Portsmouth was sent in to help in the Virgin Islands by delivering some much-needed supplies. And a high school's engineering program making a difference for a puppy in need. Born with only 3 legs, Gray, the golden retriever, is getting back on all 4s, thanks to the help of a group of high school seniors and a 3D printer. So Saron Baginda has this story.